We'll get started here in just a minute. Just wanted to welcome folks as they arrive to our weekly Friday session of critical business updates for business owners here in Southeast region. If you're new to the webinar, you can see at the bottom of your screen, if you scroll over, there's a Q&A button there. Would love to get your questions typed in, and that'll help the panelists respond to those, and then we'll take a bunch of them at the end. You're muted and without camera as you join, so you'll get a chance to see the panelists and hear from them in a moment when we get started. Thanks for joining us. If you're just tuning in, just want to give you a little audio so you knew the sound is working. We're about ready to get started, but if you're new to this webinar series, just wanted to orient you to how it works. We'll hear from panelists as we go. You'll have a chance to pose questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. If you scroll over that, you can type questions right in and we'll answer them live. We'll answer them in text, and we'll come back to a Q&A section at the end. So really want to make sure we're responding to the things people most want to hear about. I'll turn it over to you, John, whenever you want to get us started.
All right, well, now seems like just as good a time as any. Hey, everybody, welcome or welcome back. I'm John Whitler, the Regional Coordinator covering Southeast Colorado for Ogallala Commons and lead our Grow Seco initiative. And the purpose of these calls, if you're joining us for the first time, is to provide a reliable and consistent time and place to synthesize and disseminate current information and developments for business owners and business support organizations. And the duration of these weekly gatherings will be driven by the events as they unfold. So as long as it seems necessary, we're going to meet here at 2 o'clock on Fridays. And certainly as we get some of the new programs that are available as they get through the rollout phase, as our society and world gets to try to take a look at the process to get back open and reopen our economy, then we'll certainly keep going on a deeper dive on different topics and look to get through all of this together. So anyway, welcome. I appreciate that you're here, and I guess we can go ahead, and the next slide just kind of shows some of the people involved in helping this get going. So we could move to that next slide and then on to the next one even. And this slide just kind of gives you an overview of our agenda. We've got Sherry with First Southwest Bank here, and Tom to speak about the Payroll Protection Program and a little bit more information on that than we covered last week. And then we're going to dive into a little bit of cash flow planning. Certainly it's paramount for small businesses to be managing their cash at this point. And so we've got Phil here from High Plains Advisors to chat with us about that. And then we'll do a live question and answer at the end. And before we dive into all of that, I wanted to just make sure and let you guys all know that we'll be sending out a follow-up after this. Some of the questions and answers will be in that, and all of these slides with the numbers and contact information will be available at the end as well. So anyway, with that in mind, I want to first introduce Tom, who is the Rural Opportunity Representative with the Office of Economic development and international trade, so here in Colorado. So Tom's going to talk to us a little bit more about the payroll protection program and different things about that. So it's all yours, Tom. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. So yeah, I think we have the next slide has a little overview of the program. Is that correct? We have the next slide. I think maybe not. Yep, there we go. So the Payroll Protection Program is a program that is facilitated through local lending institutions like First Southwest, where Sherry works. And they are the primary points of contact for this program. So the program is underwritten and secured by the SBA. And it's with a lot of these programs, we're seeing a lot of evolution. And Sherry, step in at any point when I either misspeak or you have more insight to put into this, because I know you're going to talk a little bit more detail about this from the lender's perspective. But basically, this program is designed to assist small businesses with payroll and some operating expenses. And so the program is calculated based on your prior 12 months of payroll. And from that, that number is divided by 12 to get a monthly average. And then that monthly average is multiplied by 2.5. So it's going to cover 8 weeks of payroll with an additional percentage to cover other operational expenses, rent and utilities, and I think interest on mortgages. But these do need to be business related expenses. They can't be personal mortgages or things like that. So all of these have to be shown as business expenses, and those business expenses need to have been in place prior to the disaster, which would have been February 15th. No collateral is required, so essentially this combination between the economic injury disaster loan and the paycheck protection program as far as how the two compare. The nice thing about this is that it is a forgivable loan. So as long as you are using the funds as they are intended, which is a minimum of 75% of that for payroll costs, with the additional 25% being allowed to be used for rent or utilities, although you can use 100% of the loan for payroll. As long as you follow those guidelines at the end of the program at the 8 weeks, you can then apply to have that loan forgiven. And it's forgivable 100%. Any partial part of the loan that maybe is not forgiven because either the funds weren't used correctly or in the right percentages, there's a 1% rate on that loan for 2 years. They've deferred payment on the loan for the first 6 months, and it is open to all small businesses, private nonprofits, sole proprietorships, farms and churches. At this moment, almost, all of them are facilitated through existing SBA lenders, but I believe that they are trying to bring on board additional lending resources as quickly as they can. And Sherry can probably speak a little bit more about that process and what that might look like in the future. Because one of the things we're seeing is the biggest bottleneck is access to lenders, because everybody, there's such a demand for this program that a number of lenders are only accepting people who are existing business clients. So if you're not a business customer of a bank, a lot of times they're not going to facilitate this loan program for you. One of the things that we're trying to do at OEDIT is try to compile a list of not only SBA lenders who are doing the programs in the state of Colorado, but also ones that are willing to work with people who are not currently customers or maybe even within their regional areas. And I know that First Southwest is one of those lenders that is working very hard to facilitate small businesses across. Now, of course, what happens is we come against, it's a capacity issue for a lot of these lenders, and it's a matter of the liquidity of the funds that they have available to lend out. So a lot of people are very anxious about that. Are there still going to be funds available when I get to my place in queue? Is my business going to be eligible? There's a lot of questions out there and a lot of information that I think people are asking about, particularly when it comes to things like sole proprietorships and single owner LLCs, where maybe the owner has been taking a draw as opposed to an actual paycheck. There's also questions about the eligibility of people who have 1099 employees and contract employees. How do those people factor into that? And I'm actually going to defer to Sherry because she knows so much more about this than I do. And I want to let her speak about that because she's been incredibly diligent about trying to get the most latest information that they're getting from the SBA as far as the guidelines and what guidelines are set in stone and which ones aren't. So Sherry, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right. While Sherry's coming on, we'll just remind everybody that Sherry's with First Southwest Bank, and we've asked her to give perspective also about just what this looks like from the lending perspective and different things that small business owners need to be thinking about as they're preparing these. So I think Sherry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, one of the things with this loan, because it is facilitated by a lender, they're going to have a lot of say and give a lot of advice about what types of information they're going to need to back up the loan, as far as whether that's confirming use of funds or even payroll. And that can vary from lender to lender. And so it's hard to give across the board answers because there is going to be a lot of variation depending on the lending institution and the types of things that they're going to be looking for. And I think you just need to unmute Sherry in your. Yay.
Originally, I called in from my phone because the computer audio is not usually very good. So that's why you couldn't see me initially, or hear me, I mean. Can you hear me now okay? Okay.
Yes.
So from the lender's perspective, we tried to make this as easy of a process as possible, and we have really streamlined the application process. It is all electronic from application all the way through to the closing and funding to honor our social distancing that we're experiencing here in the state right now. My primary role with the bank is I'm basically the lead strategist for our fund and business development. And so I put together all of the programs that we utilize. And I have over 25 years of finding creative ways to access capital for entrepreneurs. And this PPP program was one of the newest programs that the SBA has put out in response to the COVID-19 crisis. And it is a little complicated, but one thing that the SBA did do is open it up to all lenders. So any bank can access this program, and other funders under certain requirements can access the program as well. And that means, a lot of your non-traditional lenders have access to the program that folks may not be aware of. But whoever you go to find assistance with this program, just make sure that this is something that they are knowledgeable about, because it can be a little painful if you are utilizing someone who has not navigated the program rules for very long or very well. So I would just encourage you to, if at all possible, utilize a bank, because they are going to most likely have expertise and experience, especially if they were already an SBA lender and have already used the program. So they're going to be accustomed to what the different parameters behind the programs that SBA utilizes are. Back to for Southwest Bank's process, you can access information on our website. We've tried to provide resources to make it easier for people to make a decision and be educated about the difference between this and the SBA economic injury disaster loans, as well as some checklists for information that you can expect to have to provide or upload when you're navigating through the application process. Our website is fswb.com, but one thing I would say about our application process is that, again, we try to make it as easy as possible, that you will never have to physically go in anywhere. We have opened it to everybody who wants to apply or needs to apply throughout the state of Colorado, whether you're a customer of our bank or not. We just feel that like that's very important as frontline financial responders. We say that we're performing triage, trying to get this access to capital that is desperately needed, particularly in our rural markets, as quickly as possible. And that's why the process is as automated as we could possibly make it. One of the challenges that we have seen for applicants is that they may not have readily available the payroll information that's going to be required. So I would encourage you that if you are going to apply, that you reach out to either your payroll provider, your accountant. If you process your own payroll, just be sure that you have enough payroll records to make application with. And as Tom mentioned, we are looking for 12 months of information preceding the loan. So it's not just 12 months from last year. It needs to be 12 months of information leading up to when the loan is being applied for. As far as sole proprietor businesses, there's a lack of clarity, I think, from the SBA in terms of guidance around, what is their real definition of a sole proprietor? What is their real definition of a self-employed individual? And what kind of information can you accept from them? So it really depends on whether or not there are, so for instance, if they're self-employed and they receive 1099 income, we will be looking for the 1099, the annual statements that they would receive from anyone that they perform contract labor for. Those individuals are eligible to apply for a loan. And because of that, that means that businesses that primarily pay folks with 1099 wages versus W-2 wages are not going to be able to utilize those 1099 wages that they paid to individuals as part of their eligible wage expenses that they can utilize to apply for the loan for. So those are, I think, we've had a big volume of questions around that. And if we could have the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about the program parameters, but Tom really covered the high points of almost everything about the program. They try to make it as easy as possible, but of course, with lack of clarity around some things, it does make it a little complicated. But in general, this loan basically turns into a grant, if that makes it easy for people to understand. We've seen a lot of reluctance for business owners, basically saying, why would I take out a loan when I can barely afford to pay my employees, or when I can't pay my employees? And the quick answer to that is, it's going to get you some capital that you desperately probably need at this point in time, and it can be forgiven if you meet all the program parameters. All businesses are eligible to apply for the most part. I mean, that's a pretty broad statement, but mostly they are, as long as you have less than 500 employees and you are not engaging in activity that is currently federally illegal, which unfortunately still includes hemp and marijuana industry. The nonprofits that are eligible, they have specified, as long as you're a 501c3 or a 501c19, which is basically veterans or nonprofit veterans organizations, you're going to be eligible, as well as churches. And the loan term is basically for 2 years. So if you do have any portions that are unforgivable after your 6-month reprieve from no payments, you are going to have amortized payments over an 18-month period at 1%. That is basically, that's less than any of us that have credit cards. So it's a very reasonable rate and term, but if you follow all the parameters of the program, again, it should, for the most part, if not all, be forgiven. There's no personal guarantees or collateral required. We're not writing credit reports. So it doesn't really matter if you've not had good credit in the past, because the banks are relying upon the federal government to make them whole or pay them back. So there's really no background checks of any kind. The loan does have to be, once you get approved, the loan does have to be fully dispersed within 10 days, or at least have the initial disbursement within 10 days. And we are getting a lot of questions around that as well, because a lot of applicants are concerned that if they haven't yet or aren't ready yet to bring their employees back, but they've gotten the loan, how is that going to affect them? And there is also a concern that if they wait too long to apply, that the money may run out. For now, there is plenty of money in the program. There's a lot of talk around providing additional funding towards this program, because I believe that everyone, oops, sorry, I'm getting a message that my connection might be unstable. So if I slip to break up, just wave at me, if you can't hear me. The funds can be used for, as Tom said, payroll, primarily payroll. 75% of the funds have to be used for like rent, utilities, mortgage loan interest, as long as it doesn't exceed more than 25% of the money that you're taking. The maximum loan amount is calculated based on your monthly average payroll from the prior 12 months times 2.5. And the forgiveness is not counted as taxable income. So any portion, if it's 100% of the loan, you are not going to have to report that on your tax returns as income. So I think that really covers the high points. Taylor's telling me my video is frozen. I hope everyone can still hear me. But I guess I will hand it off to our presenters if there aren't any questions that I'm taking now, or we can take them later.
Sure. Thanks, Sherry. We will be doing question and answer here in a little bit after the other panelists. And so I would take this opportunity, though, just to encourage anyone to go ahead and use the question and answer function to ask any questions that are on your mind. And then that lets us go ahead and have those ready for the panelists during the question and answer time. And then it also allows us to follow up with you if there's a question that we don't get to while we're live here today. So anyway, go ahead and use that. And the other thing that I wanted to just mention here, last week we had talked about getting some updates for the ag community and on what the USDA was doing. And so we just wanted to follow up on that, make good on that promise that we are following that, and that right now the guidance just hasn't come down from the USDA about how they're going to disperse funds and the programming attached to that. And so we wanted to give everybody that quick update. This it is important to note that ag firms who have employees are eligible for the PPP loans and that program as well. So that's certainly there. We've got this slide with some different resources, and we will be trying to link over to the question and answer that was provided when the Colorado Department of Ag did their town hall yesterday. So just we'll keep following that, and certainly we'll share information as it becomes available. So and Kat, if you are available and want to speak to this, I think we've got a couple of minutes here before we need to roll into the next one. So
yeah, sure. Just on the agricultural piece. Yeah, so one of the things that we're going to supply to you all, I think John kind of went through pretty well what's on that resource slide. For those of you that don't know, yesterday was a town hall phone call with the Colorado Department of Ag. And we were able to sit in on that one and take like a pretty detailed notes on their Q&A section, which I think can start to answer some of the general questions that we're seeing around, farmers markets, supply chain disruptions, personal protective equipment, deferrals and things like that, where ongoing education is considered for pesticide questions. So it's just a pretty comprehensive document based on that call yesterday. And again, just the consideration by the Colorado Department of Ag that, they are going to be right in line with the FSA as soon as those guidelines come down to help make sure that we get it down to all of the producers. So that's pretty much it.
excellent. Thanks, Kat. Next, we're going to turn to Phil, who is a partner with High Plains Advisors. He's got over 30 years experience in the financial industry. So we want to hear a little bit about managing cash flow in a time of crisis. So it's all yours, Phil.
Thank you very much, John, and good afternoon, everybody. Real honor and pleasure to be with you today. I understand under very difficult times. My first hope is that you and all your families are well, staying well, and that is our first and foremost hope for all of you. Early on, I think you heard that we want to reopen the economy. And I think reopening the economy is certainly a very important part of getting on with and past COVID-19 from the health side. But to get there, we really do need to focus on some of the lifeblood that keeps the engine running, keeps that oil flowing, so that we, in 6 months' time or so, can really come back and see where we are and be able to reopen our businesses in a meaningful way, the way we knew about it just a short time ago. If you could turn the page, sorry. I'm not the best at yet using hands and mouth at the same time. That's just a brief bio. You can flip to the next page. You're welcome to see that in time. I can say one thing that you can see, if you can see the video, that there's plenty of gray hair here. So part of my legacy in terms of the business world started with the great financial collapse in 1987. I was in Russia in 1998 when all the emerging markets melted down, in New York / Denver in 2001 when our business was in one of the towers that went down, right through to 2008. So while no one wants to put that in the top of what they're known for, I can say that as each of you may be experiencing this for the first time, there is a better day coming. There is a better day that will come tomorrow, even in some of the darkest days that we have now. To get you there, we'd like to just talk a little bit about what cash flow means. So just a scant few weeks ago, I think, we keep referring to things in days and weeks, but I think many people really look back at it and said, is that really just that short time ago? It seems like a decade or more ago that normalcy was the way my business ran. We opened doors every morning. People came in. We sold products. We sold services. They thanked us. They went on. They paid us. We paid those that we were getting money from, or were getting services from. And then we got back to the end of the month and we looked at our checking accounts, and in many cases, hopefully there was still cash there, and things kind of went along. We didn't think much about it. Cash flow kind of took care of itself. And then one day it didn't. Just flip the slide, thanks. So many of us, as we go through the course of our business, we're always focused on growth. We're always focused on that next big decision that's going to take our business from where it was into the next realm. So as business leaders, that's always been your focus. The cash has always been in the background, but if you had started out the business and you had some initial financing, it's kind of taking care of itself. Now is a very difficult, not only difficult time, but also a time we need to step back and really rethink the way you start a business. It's not about growth right now. It's about survival. So as you think about what you're doing and how you're going about it, first rule, my youngest reminds me of this all the time when I tell him that I'm worried about things that I can't control, is Dad, control what you can control. And for businesses, that theme cannot be more central. We cannot take the big broad view that says we will take on all these following challenges. We will enter all these different markets. We'll do things differently. Right now, we're thinking about the things that we have the most control over. And one of the things that we have the most control over right now is the cash that we have on hand, the cash that sits in the account. Those dollars are there. They don't need to be created. They are already there. So when you're thinking about what we're going to be looking at over the next period of time, think about it from the standpoint that protecting those assets are paramount. Making sure that you can carry on for as long as possible to give the market the opportunity to turn back in your favor is paramount. We heard a lot about PPP, and we heard a lot about the CARES Act. Those are extremely important bridges to allow for us to get you, or the economy, to get you to the next turn in the road here. But it's not the only way. Again, control what you can control. So first, think 6 months. Think 6 months at a minimum before you get to a point where the business that you knew just 6 weeks ago is closer to where it's going to be then. So when you go through that thought process, you need to take a temperature reading. First thing you need to do is you need to understand what is your monthly burn rate. For those that don't use the term, it's simply the amount of money you spend on things, services, products, whatever, for your business. Taking an inventory of that can be as simple as with a piece of paper and a pencil. Take that and get that in good focus. Establish what that is on a monthly basis. And then take your first temperature reading. Take your cash on hand and divide it by that average amount that you're spending every month. That's going to tell you how many months you have to figure this thing out. I put up 6 months. It could be less. It could be more. But the bottom line is you need to understand fully what that is based on the expenses that you need to spend today. The CARES Act is going to create a bridge, is going to give you some additional capital to get you part of the way there. I didn't put that into this number. Remember, control what you can control. Today, you may be in the process of, not yet started, or waiting for the funding, but control what you can control, dollars in hand today. Once you have an understanding of what that cash flow looks like and what you're actually spending every month, look to slow the burn, extend the runway. The idea here is to extend the playing field, to extend the game until such time as the market and the economy starts to shift more in the favor of each of you as business owners. Rethink your business models. Identify expenses that are essential, and I stress the word essential, to opening your door every day. Prioritize those expenses. Reduce and eliminate even some of those expenses where necessary. Remember, in the next few months, it's not about growth, it's about survival. And take a critical focus and assess what products you're offering, the services you're giving, and that people are reacting in a way that says, I want this product at this price. Price sensitivity will be in focus over the next 6 months to a year. So be very mindful of where you left your pricing and where you may need to actually send it. Yes, for a slide shift. Thank you. I want to leave you with a couple of key thoughts, a couple of key things to dwell on, because as you go through the next few months, it's going to be difficult. And the first thing you need to remember is traditional business paradigms really don't matter when you're in survival mode. Many of you may have taken business classes, many of you may have MBAs, many of you have been taught to say, when you have a dollar, evaluate what that return on investment is going to be. Does it make sense for me to invest these dollars into this particular service, this particular product, this particular opportunity? As we look at that over the next few months, remember, return on investment requires not only the return, but the time to get there. And time is not on our side right now. So our focus again is on what we can do now to preserve capital and extend the runway. If you have been in business for a while, remember, the more success you had, the more chance there is that there is comfort built in to the way you do operations. Opportunities will abound there. Take a critical look, take a step back, and really focus on what it is that you need to provide today. Throw away your thesauruses for the moment, okay? Do not allow, when you're making judgments about what to do with those scant few dollars that you may have, to let adjectives override numbers. Value needs to be defined more so than ever by numbers, not future opportunities. Another business paradigm people often talk to you about, finance people will go out and say, well, you have a fixed and a variable component of your spend. In all times, every expense can be viewed as variable, but in these times, every expense is variable. So whether that be the way that your rent, the way that your mortgage, the way that your terms and conditions are set with long-term vendors are set up, everything is on the table right now. Everybody needs to take a critical look at that, engage with your vendors, engage with your counterparties, and look for opportunities to allow for some relief. Remember, the game is extend the runway. To do that, you need to slow the burn. Technology is often heralded as the opportunity for us to build out our business, to grow it, to be more meaningful. Technology is also one that can quickly ride up as being a significant expense, providing limited value. So always think technology is not magic pixie dust. Focus on what you're using technology for and make sure you can draw a direct line from what you're using that technology and the cost for to what you're trying to deliver. Control what you can control. You have perhaps other assets on your balance sheet. You may have contracts of value. You may have receivables of value that you can factor. You may have inventory that you can sell wholesale. You may have other types of fixed assets that you no longer have any use for. Think about each as creating an opportunity for liquidity. As you're going into the next few months, liquidity will always be paramount. And as you're looking at these particular situations, focus on the opportunity to convert to cash. Explore alternative lending. We heard early on, windows are starting to open. Other lenders, other non-government agencies will also be joining the mix. Again, be careful of those, but also be aware that they're out there. Sometimes they provide a real opportunity and source for you to get that capital. Extend the runway. Focus on your best products and services, reduce and eliminate the others. You don't want distractions over the next 6 months. And think about, again, something that you often don't think about. Competitors in your particular business may be your best partners in this current environment. It may be a merger. You may decide that the synergies of the two companies that you want to bring together will create that successful bridge to the future. But at the very least, explore options. You buy similar products, services. See if you can leverage the purchasing power by putting your buying power together. Look at profit share arrangements. You may be in different markets, different parts of the town. Offer that you're willing to exchange some for getting an exposure to a different part of the area. And finally, breathe. Again, more decisions are going to need to be made, so keep your heads clear. Just flip the slide one more time. We started this, and I mentioned with High Plains Advisors just about a week ago. 3 of us, myself, Lou Vischer from Lou's List, and Seth Levine from Foundry Group came together and shared an idea. We said, you know, there's a lot of people on the front line. I've got medical, a daughter who's a nurse on the front line. We've all got somebody in our family, whether they be in the military, civil servant, working in a grocery store, that are putting their lives at risk so that we can continue to live even in the altered state that we have now. They're doing wonderful things. And we said, we have finance skills. What can we do? So we came up with the idea to offer our services pro bono to anybody in the Colorado business community, and candidly, nationally, we've gotten a few as well, that needed help. We launched it a scant 24 hours before the CARES Act opened its window last week. So we've, in the early stages, gotten a number, I think we're almost close to 100 now, calls about people who might have questions. We've lined up 60 senior finance executives. We've lined up a law firm, a accounting firm, as well as a tax practice that is providing some of this help and insight, again, on a pro bono basis. So we would offer that. If you need help, reach out. We're also sitting down with people in the cash flow need and saying, look, those dollars are helpful to you, but there are other ways we can help. Again, if you need help, please reach out to us. And again, we wish each of you and your families continued safety and health. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Phil. I appreciate that. We're going to move into a question and answer time here for a minute. And so again, just want to let everybody know that you can use the question and answer form there, and we'll do our best to get the questions answered here. So the first question is for Tom, and it's from Lee. Do we need to take an EIDL loan in order to access the 10K emergency grant, or can just the grant be applied for on its own?
So the advance is actually a component of the EIDL loan. So they are part and parcel the same thing. So when you do the application for the economic injury disaster loan, one of the questions is, would you like to be considered for an advance? So that advance is actually part of the loan component. The way it's structured, it's based on your employee count. So for every employee that you have in your business, you are eligible for up to $1,000 in an advance. Now that advance is basically a grant. It doesn't need to be repaid. But you cannot just ask for the advance. You would actually have to apply for the grant. Now, if you do receive an advance on the grant, you may subsequently not actually be approved for the loan, and in which case you would be just able to keep the grant money. And if you are approved for a loan, you're not obligated to accept it. So you can decline the loan and still keep the advance money. And if you are offered a loan and you accept the loan, any money that has been advanced to you would be subtracted from the loan amount. So if hypothetically it was a $50,000 loan and you had 10 employees and you were advanced $10,000, when the loan offer came, it would become a $40,000 loan because you already had $10,000 in the advance.
Excellent. And I wanted to ask you a quick follow-up on that. That was a question that came from earlier. So if you get that grant or an EIDL loan, and as well apply for and get the PPP loan, is that double dipping, or is there any specific guidelines there, or just would you take a moment and respond to that as well?
Yeah, so my understanding, and there's a little bit of, again, as Sherry pointed out, there's a little bit of confusion, and she may be able to actually clarify this a little more than I can. My understanding is that the two programs are not mutually exclusive, so you can apply for an emergency disaster loan and also payroll protection. Where you want to be very careful is not to utilize the funds for similar things. So if you have a payroll protection loan that's designated specifically for payroll and then a little bit for rent or utilities, so you wouldn't want to utilize your EIDL loan for payroll or those types of expenses, because then what that would do is it would affect the amount of your payroll protection loan or potentially the amount that would be forgiven. Sherry, do you want to jump in? Am I misspeaking on that?
No, that's right.
Cool.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil, another question for you. One, is there a link that you can share for the Financial Assistance Network? And then secondly, what if I operate my business primarily on cash? So do you have any advice, whether that's somebody in food service or any other business that is operating primarily on cash? Do you have any advice for them?
Sure, absolutely. And first, the email and or the website we should have linked. It's COVID-19 financehelp.splashthat.com. And you will find a form there that allows you to enter your particular situation. That information will be fed into our hub, and we are pledging a 24 to 48 hour turn on that, where we'll have the person asking the question assigned to an advisor. And then from there, there'll be some exploratory and until we get the issue or the question resolved. In terms of your question, John, as it relates to cash, I think that in many businesses, I'll take it in two ways. If you're talking about the application for the CARES Act financing, I would say that you need books and records, right? Whether you're transacting in cash or credit, you need to make sure that your books and records are in good order. And maybe Sherry or Tom could jump in and say, what are you expecting when somebody comes in with only, cash-based results? But in terms of from the standpoint of as you're operating your business itself, if the question is directed that way, I would say, again, the cash that you have on hand is what you need to conserve. If you haven't been able to establish credit with vendors and so forth, it's probably going to be pretty difficult in this environment to do. But again, I would suggest to any extent possible, moving your cash to some form of credit if there's that potential in your business.
And I would
Thank
probably,
you.
I would probably just add with that one of the challenges, I think, when you're doing all cash, it really comes down to how are you reconcile that money? Are you paying taxes on it? Are you accounting for that in a way where you'll be able to demonstrate that as either income or expenses? So strictly a cash business, but you're not declaring it on your taxes, that's where you're going to run into challenges as far as being able to access these programs, because you won't be able to verify it.
Excellent point, Tom.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and advance the slide. And I wanted to go ahead and get everybody this information. So the San Luis Valley Development Resources Group operates an enterprise zone fund over in the Alamosa area. And so Kevin Williams, the director, his information is on here. And they are certainly open for business, and their structure allows them to be a resource for small businesses in that area. And then as well, in the 6-county region, farther southeast, Stephanie Gonzalez is the executive director of SECED, which operates an enterprise zone fund, as well as was just approved to operate an emergency enterprise zone fund. So certainly if you know somebody who wants to donate to the Emergency Enterprise Zone Fund, that would be great, as certainly we'd love to build up the amount of money that's there to help local businesses. But you can contact either one of those for information regarding applying for their programs and how those programs work, or certainly if you're somebody who wants to even make a small donation to a program that's helping small businesses stay open in the area. And as well, over at choosecolorado.com/COVID-19, there is a growing list of, as of today, 50 different alternative funding sources for small businesses in Colorado. So we want to let everybody know about that. Both of the link to the financial assistance that we've got in the chat box, as well as that slide there, will include all of that information in our follow-up from today. And then as well, the slide here shows different ways that you can access the additional resources, the recording from today or last week, any of the information that we have to share out will certainly be coming through these venues. And we would ask that you certainly reach out to us if you've got ideas or topics that you would like to get some capacity building around over the next few weeks, or some information out. We're certainly, we're kind of putting it together on the fly each week as we see what's unfolding. And so if you've got something that you'd really like some help on, then certainly reach out to us so we can address that. So thank you guys for your time, and hang in there. We will be back again next week, and certainly we'll be following up in between. So hope you guys have a great afternoon and a good weekend, and hang in there. So thank you guys.